Good afternoon, Area 10. This is Chris checking in with you guys on April 15th, which is usually tax day, but today I think it is government stimulus check day for a lot of people. So that's exciting. It's like the whole thing's been reversed. It's kind of amazing. I wanted to talk a little bit about coronavirus and what this means about our sense of meaning and purpose in our lives. I think I've talked to some people who are working from home and or staying home a lot, and this shelter at home thing has gotten people feeling a little bit purposeless or meaningless or just aimless, something like that. And I was thinking about that, and I was reminded of this book, actually, Tim Keller's book, Making Sense of God. If you've ever read The Reason for God, which is a famous book of his, this is kind of like almost a prequel to it. And he really gets into some great ideas. It's a really good read. He gets into some great ideas around faith and meaning and doubt and all of that stuff. And he tells this story early on in the book that I think is pretty interesting about our need for meaning in life. I just want to read it to you just briefly. The psychological need for meaning is inarguable. Physician, professor, and author Atul Gawande tells of a doctor working at a nursing home who persuaded its administrator to bring in cats, dogs, parakeets, a colony of rabbits, and even a group of laying hens to be cared for by the residents. The results were significant. The residents began to wake up and come to life. People who we had believed weren't able to speak started speaking. People who had been completely withdrawn and non-ambulatory started coming to nurses' stations and saying, "I'll take the dog for a walk." All the parakeets were adopted and named by the residents. The use and need for psychotropic drugs for agitation dropped significantly to 38% of the previous level, and deaths fell by 15%. Why? The architect of these changes concluded, "I believe that the difference in death rates can be traced to the fundamental need for a reason to live." Gawande goes on to ask, why simply existing, why being merely housed and fed and safe and alive seems empty and meaningless to us? What more is it that we need in order to feel that life is worthwhile? The answer is that we all seek a cause beyond ourselves. I was thinking about that because I think in this time when people are feeling maybe some lack of purpose, we are all seeking a cause beyond ourselves. Now, some of what we're experiencing right now, I think, is restlessness. And restlessness can be cured by hobbies. You can go like, oh, I'm restless, I need to find something to get into, and you binge watch the shows, or you take up some new thing that you weren't into. You're like, you start caring for trees and planting things all in your garden. All that stuff is a good cure maybe for restlessness. But meaninglessness, or a lack of overall purpose, I think that takes something else altogether. You can't just put a hobby in meaninglessness. But I think this is where our faith really shines. I think there's a lot of evidence that Jesus had a great sense of purpose and that his followers also had a great sense of purpose. The Apostle Paul, let me just read you a couple statements Paul makes about our purpose in life. He says this, 2 Corinthians 5, God has committed us to a message of reconciliation. We are therefore Christ's ambassadors. Galatians 2, I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. Philippians 1, for me to live as Christ, to die as gain. Philippians 3, I want to know Christ in the power of his resurrection, the fellowship of sharing in his sufferings, becoming like him in his death, and so somehow to attain to the resurrection from the dead. For there is one God and one mediator between God and man, the man Jesus Christ, who gave himself as a ransom for all men, the testimony given in its proper time. And Paul says, and for this purpose I was appointed a herald and an apostle. Most of Paul's statements can be our statements. Most of his, hey, this is what it's about, didn't just apply to his life, they apply to ours now. I think that's really important and really profound, and is something to remember during this time, that there may be a downturn in the economy, we may be out of work, we may go through pain and suffering and some hard stuff here, and we may know and love people who are going through that as well. But of all the people in the world, I think we are ones that have a sense of purpose, that we can say, No, there's more to this. We can point to something else greater than ourselves, greater than our money, greater than our health, greater than our security, than our job, than any of those things. We can point to something greater and say, God has actually laid out a purpose for our lives, and we have meaning for our lives that all the suffering can't actually take away from us. And I think you see this as we work through this coronavirus time, and you're going to see, and we see suffering in us and around us. These words from Paul are a great reminder that we have meaning and purpose no matter what life throws at us. So that's what I've been thinking about lately, and wanted to share that with you. My hope and prayer is that during this time of the virus, we get creative, yes, but also that we will look inward and look deep, and think about where is our life going? What is this really all about? And this pause in the normal life, American life pace and schedule and all that we will use this pause to go, where am I going with this thing, and what is this about? So that's my thought for this week. I wanted to give you just a couple more quick things here. Just an update about our church. As we've been emailing, calling, Zoom meetings, and checking in with people, as we've been doing that as a church, both the staff, the elders, different small group leaders, we have been checking in on people, and a lot of people have asked, hey, how are you? Which is super cool, which is great. A lot of people said, how are you doing in the church? How's your family? How's all that? And I really appreciate that. So just an update on Area 10 as a church, and those of us in leadership. We're doing pretty well. We're in good spirits through this thing. I can say the staff is in a pretty unified place, and we are enjoying working together and being creative and reflective, and trying to figure out new solutions to the new problems that we're presented with. And we're enjoying getting to reach out to a lot of you and checking in. And so I think we're in a pretty good spot as a church right now. I talked to a lot of churches. I was on a call yesterday with about a dozen different churches from around the Mid-Atlantic, and hear how they're handling things, and everybody's trying to be creative. Some people are getting really worn out. I haven't seen that on our team yet. It seems like we're in a pretty good headspace and sort of emotional space about what we're doing. So we're doing all right. The church financially did well through March. And so we're waiting to see how the finances work for April. That's always, we've been able to cut our expenses some by not being in the bird and trying to trim back our budget and try to operate pretty lean during this time. And that seems to help as well by controlling our spending. People have been faithful in giving online, and so that's been good. I did want to mention this idea to you about financial giving. Somebody came to me last week and said, hey, we still have our jobs in our family. We are not going to be unemployed. We're in, a very stable sort of job. Things are fine for us. So when we get that government stimulus check, we're going to give it to the church so that you can give it to somebody who's not in good shape. And I thought that was super cool, and hadn't thought about it. I had thought for my family we would tithe, or at least give 10% of the stimulus check to the church. But think about that as well. If you want to help out, if you're in a spot where you're pretty solid right now, and you want to give some of that, or a portion of that, or all of that, we've got our ears to the ground and are listening for what the needs are out there and who is really struggling and where we can help. We've been sort of putting money together in an engaged fund to reach out to so we can respond when the needs come up. That would be a cool way to stay involved. So anyway, I hope you guys are blessed and well, and enjoying the warm weather when we have it, and hope to see you all soon. Take care. God bless.